Hello, everyone, and welcome to number 17, or episode 17, excuse me, of the JD Outdoors podcast. Follow me on Instagram at JD underscore outdoors 1773. My guest today will be Aaron Anders, CEO and co founder of Tungsten. You can follow them on all social media accounts at Tungsten. Today, we'll be talking about the best tungsten company out there, specifically on one technique where tungsten shines, and that is the Texas rig. How you doing today?
I'm good, man. Good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing very good. I was very excited when on Instagram Tungsten reached out to me to set up this interview with you. I've been on your pro staff for 2 or 3 years now, I believe, and I love your products. It's just you can't beat them, honestly.
Hey, man, I really appreciate that. And yeah, it's cool that you've been around for a few years. You'll have seen some of the changes, right? Some of the things that we've done, and constantly trying to come out with different things. We got a few things that we're cooking up here for 2021.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been an awesome last few years, and yeah, we're constantly working to try to make things better and bring out a different tungsten product, which isn't easy,
Yeah.
but it's what we're here for.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys, the last few years, have definitely come out with some cool stuff like the net heads and whatnot. And I have not yet used them because I fish the Niagara River a lot, and you snag up like crazy. So it's difficult for me to justify using a tungsten net head out there when you're just breaking off every 10 casts or something like that. But on Lake Erie, I definitely want to try them this year because I know that they'll shine because it's pretty snag free out there. So using one of the heaviest ones you guys got, just getting it down there and
I
dragging
hear you,
it
man. I
around.
hear you. That 3/8 has been awesome, right?
Yeah,
Like I know a lot of guys were using it before, but to be able to put yeah 3/8 into a Ned with a finesse technique when you don't really want like an inch of lead in front of
yeah,
it, to
yep.
keep it that way, right? So no, it's been super cool to be able to do little things like that, and for me, it's a passion, right? I fish. I'm an angler, so for me, when we're bringing something out, I'm like, what would I want? Where's the gap? Let's say in the market, but also like, what would I want to use? And sometimes it's actually a little selfish, but hopefully it's yeah, hopefully it means it's a good thing for a lot of other people too.
Oh
So
yeah, chances are if you're wanting it, then a lot of other people are wanting it too. It's not.
100%, man,
Yeah.
100%.
So, can you give us a little background on your fishing career? How and when did you start fishing? Stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people, I'm sure I started fishing with my dad right when I was a really little kid, and I get two little ones myself right now, so I kind of get it. I think the initial reason to go fishing with my dad was to get me out of the house so my mom could have a space, some space, right? So, but no, I mean, I remember catching rock bass and little, bluegill on our float in a little river, and they seemed giant at the time, right? I just
Mhm.
remember all that stuff, catching little catfish, and
Yeah.
didn't matter what it was. And so for me, like that's how I started fishing, and I kind of got hooked, right? Like no pun intended, but like hooked on. I love being outside. I just that's a big piece of who I am. I mean, I was talking to my wife last night. I was like, man, I gotta get out of the house a bit more, right? Like it's just kind of who I am, and wanting to be outside. So that's kind of where it all fit together. And then fished a lot growing up, and then when I was in my early teens, I mean I'm super competitive, played a lot of sports growing up, but like I learned about bass fishing tournaments,
Mhm.
and then it just went to a whole nother level for me, right? Mixing the competitiveness with being outside and fishing and all this other stuff and just learning. And it was really cool. Like I remember fishing my first tournament ever, and not that I necessarily thought we'd win,
Mhm.
but I thought we'd be like competitive, right? Like I don't know. I guess I didn't really even think of it other than like, hey, we're gonna go and we're gonna catch them and we'll see what happens, but probably be competitive. And man, did we ever get our butt kicked. And it was this like eye-opening just fuel that I was like, wow, like there's this whole other level, right? Like I never really, let's say, had been exposed to other people's, let's say,
Mhm.
skill, right? So it was this whole thing, right? You fish with buddies and you fish with whatever, and we catch them, but like not there was never this like litmus test of how did other people do or how good could you have done, and that's what tournament fishing did to me, and it was yeah, it was this whole nother level of just fuel. So I started fishing competitive tournaments for about 13, 14. and fished a lot of those growing up, and continued to. And then that's actually how I met my partner that I run Tungsten with. We fished competitive tournaments together. So we're true anglers that fish, that love it. And from there, as I said, it's kind of where I've gone with it. And it's interesting to see like the different chapters of your world and your life, right? Like for me, I knew that I was not going to go fish the elites. That, you know what I mean? That was never going to be where I wasn't going to get to that level in terms of time and just what I was going to do. So that's a big piece of where Woo started, right? That was my ability, when it's winter, when I've got two little ones and I'm not on the water as much, to be able to be as deep in the fishing world as possible. So for me, that's kind of where it's come from. I mean, I fish as often as I possibly can. I think about it probably 10 times more than I actually get out there, but it is that, anybody who knows what we're talking about knows daydreaming in February about where they might be in July, and thinking about like that cast along that angle across the that flat, and if you can pop it the right way, that one will come eat it, right? Like that. And thinking about that in in March, when something else can be going out there. So anyways, that's a bit about me, man. I'm a fishing nut, and that's kind of the precursor to a lot of other things that are going on in my world.
So do you still fish tournaments now, just sparingly, or?
Yeah, more sparingly. I mean, there's intention to get back to it too, right? Like I think, as I said, it's ebbs and flows of life. I have a great bass club where I am, and I fish a lot more clubbies right now, because I just have the reality of that I'm not on the water as much to compete in some of the bigger events right now, and that's okay with me. I mean, it is and it's not. Don't get me wrong. I want to be out there more, but like there's chapters, and this for me chapter right now is about growing Woo and fishing clubbies and having fun with it and staying connected to the sport. I love that much, and introducing my kids to it, all that stuff. That's kind of the chapter I'm in right now. And no doubt, I'll be out there again when this chapter is over.
Are your kids at a good age to start fishing right now, and like you're going to be able to start? No, not yet.
No, they're still too little, man. I got a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old little boy. So I mean, their bath toys are topwater lures. Hooks off. So just, a public service announcement. Hooks are off. But I mean, that's their bath toys are topwater lures, and they want to spend time in the boat, and we have fun with it, right? And hopefully they enjoy it, and we can spend more time out doing that. If they don't, they don't, but they'll have every opportunity to really enjoy it. And my wife loves the outdoors, and I'm super fortunate that way that we had a really nice day in November. I mean, I live in the north, so it's cold. So we had a nice day in November where we can go throw the boat in the water. It's 55 degrees, and we go buzz around for half an hour just to keep the kids active in the outdoors, right? So I don't know, they're not quite there yet, but if early indicators, as I said, of top water lures in the bathtub and wanting to be in the boat and all that other stuff, if early indicators are what they are, hopefully we'll have a little tournament team that I can try and beat. That'll be the day, I guess, right? Is when Grayson and Bennett, or my two boys, beat Dad. That'll be a sore but prideful day.
Oh, for sure. So, a big question is, what made you want to start a company, specifically a tungsten company? Obviously, you've been involved in fishing since you were very young, but what pushed you towards starting the company?
I mean, I've always been, my whole professional career, if you will, has been running businesses. That's just what I've done since I was in college. It's kind of who I am. And I think entrepreneurship right now is a sexy thing. But I've been kind of kicking around in it for a long, long time. And so in saying that, it was inevitable to me. Like when I was in college, I would guide in the summer, right? And I remember thinking about things like, hey, there's all these corporate golf tournaments. Could I run a corporate fishing tournament and get a group of people together? And that's one of the businesses that I ran for a few summers. And it was always kind of like in it, and it super transparent. There's a lot of pipe where I live, and I like to flip grass beds. And I got really sick of having a pike swimming around with a $12 piece of metal in his face, right? When he'd bite me off, feeling that thump and leaning back and there being like literally nothing there because he got chomped off. So, it was interesting. I started to get like looking, I said it earlier, it was about me, right? I was looking at an opportunity to be able to run something for myself, whether it be a sponsorship with a tungsten company, starting a tungsten company. I didn't know, but it came from like literally flipping a grass bed and being like, this is enough. I got to do something about it. And, I was lucky enough to be able to process through with a really good friend of mine and my partner Chris, and we were looking at different things, and I was like, look, if I'm looking for this right now, there's probably a lot of other people that they're looking for it right now. So we decided to start the company, and we started it with building a community on Instagram, which is not an uncommon thing in 2020, but the business is 4 years old. It wasn't quite as common 4 years ago. We were able to go out and build a community of people that enjoyed fishing. We did a lot of reposting, right? We basically built a repost account to start, and then we did that as we were designing out some of the products and packaging and the brand. And then we had this community built that we were able to go flip into the brand. And then once we were able to do that, the business started. So what made me want to start it? Man, I don't know. I can't not tinker with things. That's just a piece of who I am. And then mix that with a bunch of pike biting me off at the time of about 4 years ago, where tungsten was clearly becoming a bigger but more superior product. But I didn't think about that. I wasn't thinking about the market trends of it was like, no, like I'm flipping tungsten. It's way better. It's incredibly expensive, and I'm sick of being bit off. And you're talking about Niagara River and the Ned, man, that's what it's like out here sometimes, where I am, flipping grass beds. You can go through 6 or 8 weights in a day if if things line up the wrong way for you. So that's kind of where it started, and then it took off, right? We started with tungsten weights, flipping drop shot weights, and then our goal is to be a business where anything tungsten you can get in one spot. I think that is a tough part for a lot of other businesses. It's pretty easy, actually. I'll say relatively easy to start a flipping weight and drop shot weight company. We're trying to be a tungsten business, meaning that if it's a flipping jig, if it's a Ned head, swim bait hooks, et cetera, if it's tungsten, and if you want something that you currently use in lead in tungsten, that you can find it in one spot, versus trying to piece it together through 9 different brands. So that's kind of where we're headed. How long it'll take us to get there, who knows? But we're gonna give it a run.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely appreciate that, because like I said, I've been on for a few years now, and I've seen the progressions you guys have made to get new products in. And it's definitely exciting because, like you said, it's the one-stop shop. You can go there and find just about everything you need in tungsten. And now, especially with like the closed eye drop shot weights, you can do so many things with them, whether you're doing a Jika rig or whatnot. And there's just a lot of versatility now in your guys' products. And
and you just mentioned something that we're gonna start with next year. So the Jika is coming out, so we're gonna have a prepackaged Jika rig with a smaller split ring than you'd find. So it's a little bit more, but it's a double reinforced. It's a thicker wire. So it's a smaller wire, smaller O-ring, but it's thicker wire. With the closed shot drop shot. We've got a Tokyo rig, so I probably shouldn't say that out loud, but we had a Tokyo rig that's like 98% ready. I just got an email this morning about it. So final stages of a Tokyo rig, which will be pretty cool to add. So we have the Jika, we have the Tokyo. We're in the process of a tube jig head. So that's on the way.
That's huge.
Other things we got flying are as a swing head. Swing head, and then trying to put that same swing head shape that we've built. It's a bit of a unique shape. It's not crazy different, but it's a bit unique. Putting that into a football jig. So those are kind of the top of mind things, and then we got a whole list of other stuff. So you heard it here. I'll say first. Maybe I shouldn't share some of that stuff that we're playing with, but again, Jika and Tokyo, they're there. They're going to be there early part of the year for sure. Awesome. And then we've got the tube head and that swing head that's probably into the year. And then we've got also, I guess I didn't mention, but the EWG Ned is going to be out too. But that's probably not late till late.
Man.
That's probably not. Yeah, it's probably not till late 2021. That
Yeah.
hook it was a custom hook design, and it took a long time. And that hook is almost ready. The biggest thing with that one is to get it to stand up properly. So right now, like our Neds, I mean, you can't get it all, but like if I knock them off my counter, even outside of water, when they land, they're not all just stand, but like some of them are standing up, which is kind of crazy, right? So it took us a long time to get that weight balanced out properly. And then when we put a custom hook into it, it takes even longer because we got to wait for the hook to get manufactured and then manufacture the head and make sure it all kind of fits together properly. So we could probably do it quicker if we just jammed the new hook in the existing. The head shape will be the same, but the balance will be a bit different. So anyway, it's just a bunch of little stuff that we're, kind of geek out on some of the stuff that we're playing with. So I'm not sure that 100% of it will be done in 2021, but the EWG we're pushing, it's probably going to be the fall of next year. The Tokyo rig will be out for sure. Jika rig, that'll be out for sure. Awesome. And then there's a few other things, as I said, in the football head, swing head, tube jig head that hopefully will be middle part of the year. We're trying to get that ready for prime time, which is June, July, if we can, when the entire country is not frozen. The entire country at that point it's warm. It's kind of Amazon hot in different places versus than hotter than maybe you want it to be. But the whole country at that time is in the game, so that's where we're trying to get it ready for.
That's awesome. I'm super excited for that, especially the football jigs, because this year I just really started getting into throwing the football jig, and I realized how superior tungsten ones are over the lead heads, and it's just
you can feel things, man. It's like you can actually feel what's going on down there, which is such a huge advantage of it. It's it's a premium, but I mean, I always think about it where I'm like, you're gonna take an entire day, what you spent on rods, reels, line, the time that you're out there, boat, gas, all that other stuff to spend. I get it. Tungsten's way more expensive than lead, but to not spend the extra $2, let's say, on something that legitimately will allow you to legitimately allow you to get more out of what you're doing after you've spent all that other stuff to get to that point. It's almost like not doing the last rep in the gym, right? Like that last rep is that's what gets you that much further. So it's like almost not doing that, deciding to stop at 9 instead of 10. It doesn't really, you don't quite get the same out of the time you're putting in that way. But anyway, those are the things we got coming out. We're working really hard on them right now. We'll see if we can get them out by July. Some of them will be for sure, not all of them, but some of them will be out for sure. And then that's we have a whole list of stuff we're working on, but that's kind of our 2021 lineup, I guess, of products that we're going to try and add.
Awesome. Super excited for that. That's awesome. So next question is, what is your best bass fishing memory? Something small, big, whatever.
I mean, if it's a bass fishing memory, usually it's big. There's a bunch of them that are coming to mind right now. I mean, I don't know. I think one of the biggest ones was 5 years ago. So my partner is in Florida, and so he keeps his boat at Okeechobee, and we went down in February to get away from this white stuff that's up north here. So we went down in February, my wife and I, and went to Okeechobee, and the whole time we were joking around, the three of us in the boat, we're going to catch a 10 today, or the drive up. We catch a 10. Who's going to catch a 10? Are we going to catch a 10? And so we started fishing a grass flat in the morning. It was all right. We caught a couple little ones, but it was just, we were playing around. And as the day went on, obviously, I mean, down there it gets better as the day goes on, obviously, as things warm up, right? So especially in February, and started catching a few more. And my partner caught a good one. It was about 6. So I got a 6 and I was putting it in the live well. And so I was bent over, my head's kind of in the live well. My wife was on the back deck of the boat, and she's like, "Oh, I got one." And she's throwing a swim jig. "Oh, I got one." And my partner jokes like, "Oh, is it the 10?" Like that was the thing, right? Every time someone set the hook, right? Like, "Oh, is it the 10?" And he goes, "Is it the 10?" And as I see it like just out of my peripheral vision, this like thing wallow just at the furthest part of the cast, right? Like it's probably landed like right on its head, right? Crank in. Oh, I got one. Thing wallows, can't get itself out of the water. It's just that giant fish. You're like, and the boat went from like kind of calm and laughing to like complete pandemonium right away. Like, it is the 10. Oh my God. Right. Like it's way at the end of the cast. You're like, oh my God. So everyone's like kind of freaking out, and the wind's blowing us across this flat as she's fighting this fish in, and she gets it close, and it's just the biggest largemouth I've ever seen, right? They're just enormous. And so I've got it. I've got the net, and the boat's kind of pulling. The fish kind of got behind the boat because of the boat moving with the wind. And 5 years ago, we didn't have poles, right? Like it wasn't like you just put your poles down and fight fish, right? So she's fighting it in, and its head's coming out. I'm like, oh, it's that's when it's gonna pop, but it's close enough, right? I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, if this thing pops, I'm gonna have that like second where it doesn't know it's come free.
Yep.
And I'm going after, like, I'm gonna be able to scoop this thing, right? It's close enough. I'm going after it. So she gets it up even just like 1.5 feet closer, so I can net it, and I net it, and we pull it up and drop it into the cockpit essentially of the boat, and everyone's just silent for a second, and then just drops to the floor and laughing. We're like, oh my god, like what did we just do? And it wasn't 10, it was 8-12. Hey, but it was so spawned out, like that thing. A couple things. One, the only reason we got it, the only reason we were able to probably bring it in from a full length of a cast like that is because she was so tired from spawning. Yeah. So she was spawned right out. It's just kind of that perfect storm, but just the biggest head on her. We measured her. It was just the biggest body on a largemouth I'd ever seen. She was 27.5 inches long. Like just an unbelievable fish. Where like literally 10 days before, like, before she'd spawned, so call it 10 days before, that fish is well over 10.
Yeah.
Well over 10. So, but she'd just come out off the, out of some of the cane, out to rest. And they said my wife happened to probably drop it like 7 inches, the end of a cast from this thing's face. So I don't know. I think that's, to me, like that's the most memorable one because of, I think, who was there, right? Chris, who's, one of my best friends, my wife caught it of all the people, because that's exactly how it should go, right? Like it's just that funny thing. And, just the joking and all of us, I'll never forget, like my hands were tore up. We caught that afternoon. I don't know. It was one of those like special days, right? The sun popped out. So the water warmed up a little bit more. I don't even know. We probably caught another 50. Some of them, between like 2 and 5 pounds. We never caught another one over 5, but like we probably caught another 50. My hands were tore up. We took a really cool picture that like I still see on the internet right now, circulating around with a bunch of memes. If you ever see 2 thumbs up that are tore up with somebody with a black or a gray hoodie in the background wearing a gray hoodie, those are my thumbs from that day. All right. So it's just so funny. That's why it stays with me though, is I'll never forget like the side. It was like silence in the truck on the drive back, because you're like, did that just happen?
Yeah, for sure.
Like we're still just like, did that just happen? And I don't know. That's my best bass fishing memory right now. I wish I could say it's one that I caught. I mean, I definitely remember some big ones along the way. I still think figuring out a spy bait. I started throwing a spy bait about 7 years ago. Okay. So I started throwing it. Now it's everywhere. I was one of those where I'm like, but learning that and catching a few giants on that to start was pretty cool, right? Like having that kind of thing. So those are some of them there. And where I am is smallmouth country, so it's out there where I am right now. I mean, the 8-pounder is not as uncommon as it used to be where I am. There's multiple that get caught every year up here, so maybe one day I can rival her 8-pound Florida largemouth with an 8-pound brown one. But I don't know. We'll see where it all goes. I'm sure there's lots more to make, but man, that's the one that comes to mind first every time right now.
That's awesome. That's how it goes though. The person who like, you don't think is going to catch the biggest one just ends up doing it. And or like my brother who fishes like 5 times a year catches his PB like every time we go out, and it's like, well, like he catches a 5-pound smallmouth, and we're like, bro, we've been catching 2-pounders all day, and you come up here and just for the first day fishing of the year, and you just catch your PB and it's
jack
like,
one.
How it goes.
That's the way it's supposed to be, man. That's what keeps you coming back. It's like, if we're out there all the time, that's why we keep coming back, because we see it. But for them, that keeps them coming back as often as they will, because they think it's that easy. So I love it. It's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, for sure. So, where is your dream place to fish? Now, this one's interesting. Like you might have already been to your dream place to fish, or it's someplace that you've never been, but the answers are always interesting.
I don't know, man. I love place is a tough one for me. Like I think I'm spoiled where I am. I mean, I live right beside one of the best smallmouth fisheries in the world. So, I think it's tough. I mean, I think for me, I'd love to go fish. Some of the Texas lakes. Like Fork. I'd love to go play around some of that. But when you ask the question, the fun thing that comes to me is like not the lake. It's like who I'd fish with, right? Like I think like that's kind of a. I love the idea of some of the like super northern lakes that may not have ever been touched,
Yeah.
right? Like those things where it's like I don't know, that stands out to me. So I don't know. I think, I mean, there's obviously like, I call these like big lakes, like stadiums, right? Like, I think of like, you can go, it's one of the only sports where you can't just go play at any stadium you
Yeah.
want in another sport. Here, you can go to the stadium if you want.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a really cool thing. I think lakes, when it comes to lakes, the reason maybe why there's not one that comes to mind is there's such ebbs and flows to them, right? Like we were just talking about Okeechobee, but then you get a big hurricane rip through and that lake's not the same as it was for a while. I mean, Falcon Lake was something that was just on my list, but then, it comes out and guys are catching literally 40-pound bags and everyone goes down and it kind of gets ruined for a little bit and then comes back. And so I don't know, like I think it's cool to be a part of the stadium and be around some of the water where I am, but I don't know. I think I think of like growing up fishing with my dad and grandpa right on small lake up here every year on Father's Day.
Yeah.
Right, like that type of stuff stands out. That stuff stands out for me. As I just shared, the story of fishing with my partner Chris and my wife. That's a cool thing to me. So I don't know. I think like my dream place to fish is more about who than where.
Yeah.
But I do think it's very, very cool to be able to go. And I mean, I'm super fortunate that I have access to a lot of those places to go and do different things based on what I do. But that's again part of the reason we started the business was to be able to have that. So I don't know. It's probably not a black and white this specific place,
Yeah.
but man, I do look forward to, let's say, Falcon before it's going to come back. That lake's going to be just ridiculous again. But 3 or 4 years from now, before it's a couple of years before it starts getting the magazine exposure again, and everyone's like traveling down there to whatever it's called, Zapata, Texas, and on that kind of stuff, right? Like, so I don't know. I think it's gonna be really cool to be at some of those trophy lakes before they get ruined again. And I say ruined, not that that's a bad thing. It's what fishing is. It's pressure, but yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be cool to go to those places, but I think about who I'd go there with more than where I'd specifically go.
Gotcha. So now here's my favorite part of the episode because it's super informational. And when, for people who fish or people who are just getting into fishing, always looking for, that the setup for specific, lures, rigs, what have you. So obviously, Tungsten, we're going to talk about a Texas rig. So what is your favorite setup or setups if you have multiple for fishing a Texas rig, rod, reel, line, lure, hook, weight, plastic, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I flip a Texas rig a lot. So for me, I'll start with the rod and reel. So for me, I flip a pretty long rod, but a bit softer. I flip a 7.6 medium heavy rod, but it's a frogging rod. So it's got a little bit more tip to it. So I like that because I always flip fluoro, which I know is a bit strange compared to a lot of other areas, but I flip fluoro all the time. So I'll flip basically a 17 or 20 pound fluoro leader. I use an Albright knot to connect it to braid. I fish braid honestly just because I don't want to have to replace the fluoro all the time. So that braid is there more as just, I'll call it backing, but so I flip fluoro a lot. So I need to have a rod that's got some, it's going to absorb the impact. If I'm using a super heavy rod, I'll snap it every time. But the water where I'm so clear, I just think it gets me an extra bite or two. So if like my consistent is going to be 40 pound braid back into a 17 pound fluoro leader connected with, I guess actually crazy Alberto knot. I think is actually what I tie. Okay. So I tie a crazy Alberto to connect the two 7.6 medium heavy, but it's a really fast tip on that rod. I fish it with a Revo Rocket actually.
Mm.
So as fast a reel as I can, because I want to get it. I want to get, if I hook a fish, I want to be able to move them quick.
Yeah.
But more like flipping for me, like throwing a Texas rig, like it's a needle in a haystack. More flips you can make, the more likely it is that you're going to catch a fish, right? So regardless of what's going on, like if you flip 400 times, I flip 300 times, you're probably going to catch more fish than I will. So I just think like getting that bait in quicker and getting it back out, getting it in quicker, getting it out, as well as it being a tool to move fish away. So that's kind of my rod reel line. I flip a craw a lot. My call it confidence flipping bait right now is the Berkeley Chigger Craw. So I like the bigger claws on them that I can shake it. So I'll flip it in, I'll shake it. I think those claws shake a bit more and maybe move a bit more water. Now I've never asked a fish. Well, I guess I have. They just don't talk to me. So like, is that actually the case? I don't. I'm guessing, but you know, when I flip it into a bed and I can shake it and they can feel it a bit more, I think they can find it sometimes. So whether it's on a Tokyo rig or a Texas rig, that's kind of my go-to. I do like the Max scent, the hog that they have as well. I have a harder time having it fall straight, if I'm being honest. I don't really know why, but so I don't know. I just don't have the same confidence in that. But I flipped that one a little bit more on the Tokyo rig because it falls straighter, it sits straighter to me. So hook, it just got to match the size of the bait, right? So for that, the Chigger Craw, I'm actually a 2/0 extra wide gap, and it's probably a 3/0 that goes into the 3/0 that goes into the hog. So 2/0, 3/0, but it depends on the size, right? Like of the bait that I'm fishing, like it's got to match the bait. But that's really for me, I guess, if I can get it for the Chigger Craw, I can get the knot into the bait, and I can get the end of the hook directly between the eyes of that craw. It's about the max size that thing's gonna fit. So I flip it with a bead. So we have the flipping beads. I put the bead, so I slide the bead on. I have the bead on in between there. I always peg my weight. I should say always, but 90% of the time I'm gonna peg it. So I've got a peg. My order from like the line down, I'll go peg, weight, then the bead, hook, and then obviously plastic of choice, I guess, on there. I use the bead for a few reasons. I think a lot of people think of it as like the sound. I guess there's a little bit in there, but it actually, the coolest part to me is it acts as a pivot. So when you thread a plastic into a Texas rig or anything like that, where you've got the weight up against the end, sometimes it can go crooked. It can like go crooked. If you put a circular bead between them, it acts as a pivot. It's actually impossible to make it crooked. It 100% of the time hangs straight because you've got the bead in there. That's why I use it. It's almost like a cheat for me to make sure that everything's in line. And then size of weight, that completely depends on like depth of water, how much vegetation there is. I'm usually a heavier weight the later the season goes on because the vegetation's thicker, the grass is thicker as the year goes on. So I probably start at about a 1/4 ounce, 3/16 or a 1/4 ounce. I think one of our sneaky sizes is the 5/8. It's a little bit heavier than a half. So that's one that we actually don't sell a ton of, but we keep it there because I want it almost more than anything.
I use it too.
I love it. It's a sneaky little like mid-season size, and then some of those same beds in the later time of the year, it's like a 3/4. So, but I'll usually if I'm going to be fishing a Texas rig, I'll typically have if I know I'm going to go fish a Texas rig, for sure, I'm typically going to have 2 rods on the deck for 2 different sizes. Like I might have a 1/4 and a half. Or I might have a 3/8 and a 5/8, or I might have a half and a 3/8 and a 3/4. Like I usually have 2, depending, because I'm going to, again, I'm going to be in different depths or different parts of the bed. So I'll flip. Yeah, you'll have the same setup, just 2 different sizes of weight. So the size of the weight's kind of hard to say. This is the go-to. I think the biggest mistake a lot of people use, or a lot of people have often, is too heavy. You'll have too heavy of a weight because it's almost like a soother. It's comforting. Like you can feel it better with a heavier weight, but often it hurts the action of that bait a little bit. So I don't know. I probably have those 2 on there as well to try to like force myself to go a little bit lighter if I can. But that's my setup, right? Top to bottom. That's what I'm fishing. If I'm flipping a lot, we flip a lot where I am in like 8 to 12 foot of water where the grass is up
Mhm.
6, 8 feet, right? Kind of
Yeah.
thing. And you can see some edges but also flip into the middle. So, I'm lighter out on the edge and then I'm heavier when I'm flipping
Yes.
into.
Get down in there.
Exactly. So that's my setup.
That's awesome. All right. Yeah. Good information there. I appreciate it. And I agree with the whole, I'm terrible about it, but going lighter because most of the time that will work if especially if they're not biting the heavier weights. If you go lighter, they will attack it. And I'm just like you said with the whole feel, like if I could throw 1 ounce all the time and just boom, you can feel every single little thing with it. But obviously, you got to listen to what the fish want to tell you and what they want.
100%, man. 100%.
So we thank you for answering that. You did give a lot of good detail there, and hope the listeners get something out of that, and hopefully they can take it and use it for themselves and catch some more fish with it. But a few last questions to wrap up the show. Kind of some fun and helpful questions. But what is your favorite snack on the water?
Man, that changes a bunch. So if I have to say my go-to is to order a large pizza the night before,
Okay.
eat half of it for dinner, and and then eat the other half for lunch and through the day. So
All right.
it's kind of like that. So I'm a simple man, and that is a simple answer. So that is the truth. If I'm in the town, like I don't know, so that's one go to. The other one that I've actually really gotten more of recently is like I love to eat grapes on the water because there's so much water in them.
Yeah.
So I eat a ton of grapes. It's kind of like it's a little bit silly, but for me, but yeah, I'm like it's probably my wife's influence, but like grapes, whatever. And the one thing that I do a lot of is I usually will have a banana, and I know that's a no go
Oh.
for a lot of people, but I do it as almost like I'm gonna go make my own luck. I don't
Yeah.
I don't like that like superstition. And I know people what have you, but that's kind of my thing. Is often if you get in the boat, I'll have a half of a large pizza that was cold in the fridge the night before, but warms up in the in the boat, and
Yep.
a banana and an absolute ton of water. So it's I drink an absolute ton of water on the water. It helps when I get off the water after a long hot day. I didn't used to do it quite as much, but like I am on the sunscreen train hard. I drink a ton of water, and when I get off the water, I'm not quite as zapped, I think, as a lot of other
Yeah.
people are. So, but yeah, it's probably going more on the healthier side. That's not my doing. If I'm at a derby away, it's a large pizza at night, half for dinner, half for lunch the next day.
Yeah. This past summer or last year, I can't remember when it was, but my buddy Alex and I were fishing. He was like, "Man, I got a headache. I got to run to the 7-Eleven." So I drop him off at the dock. He takes the truck, goes get some medicine, comes back, and he gets out of the truck with a full large pizza. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" Like, what? And he was like, "Well, they told me I could get like a slice for $1 or I could get a whole pizza for 5. So why wouldn't I get the whole pizza?" And I'm like, "Fair enough." So we just
Fair
munched
enough.
pizza for the rest of the day, and that was
There
awesome.
you go. There
Yeah,
you go. You know exactly what I'm talking about then.
I'm gonna have to take that advice more this year. Just get a whole pizza for dinner and then eat the rest on the water the next day. But can't go
Makes
wrong.
lunch real easy. It
Yeah.
makes real lunch real easy.
So here's my favorite question that I ask because I think a lot of people struggle with it, and it's something that everyone, even if you're good with your, staying positive on the water, there's always tips to be had and learned. So, do you have any tips for staying positive on the water?
Man, it's hard. You know what? Like it's an awesome question, and I almost feel hypocritical talking about it because it's not like it's something that I'm immune to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, two things for me that I always try and do if I feel myself spinning out to have some of that water and maybe a slice of pizza. take a minute, but it's easy to say it, but like you're fishing.
Yeah.
Like like if someone can remember the fact that you're fishing right now, like this is not we're not at war,
Yeah.
like we're not overseas, like this is not that, like if you think about it, like I'm I'm upset right now because I'm not catching fish.
Yeah.
Like it's not because you need them to like eat and feed your family. You know what I mean? Like this is not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So I think like sometimes like for me, keeping that in perspective, because you like when you're being negative on the water, you're like amping it up, right? You're making it something bigger than it actually is. So for me, like trying to bring it back into perspective, like I'm fishing, like my family's well-being is not on the line here. I'm not, as I said, my life is not on the line. Like I'm fishing. I've chosen to do this in my spare time because it's fun. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like that often will give me at least a second. And then the other thing I think about is, man, it only takes like, how long does it take to have a good day? Right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm like, well, it's 11 a.m. and things haven't gone well. How many times? I mean, so Seth Flatter's one of our guys, you know, that we work with and we talk frequently, especially around some of the events and some of the Johnson brothers and just different things. And, you know, even this year on the St. Lawrence, like we're close to where you are.
Yep.
You know, it was 130. He had 3 fish for 8.5 pounds, something ridiculous. He drove 80 miles one way to fish a rock pile, caught 4 real quick, had to leave, had 19 and change and got back.
Wow.
Now that's a guy, like to me, when I think about stuff like that, I'm like, it's just not giving up. Yep. Right. Like, and I say that, I don't mean like the, like, Ike, like never, I just mean like it takes 15 minutes to completely change the whole day.
Yeah.
And it takes 2 or 3 bites. So if I'm like out of it for those 2 or 3 minutes, that's going to make everything worse. So I think, to me, a couple other pieces on that, without again getting too crazy, is we were just talking about like sunscreen and water. It's way harder to kind of mentally be there if you're like tired or just zapped from the sun. Like everyone knows what, you know, I'm tired and cranky. If you put yourself in like I'm tired and cranky like mode to start, man, it's going to be really hard to have a bad day, have a good day on the water. So like some of those other things, like I think having confidence that you'll figure it out, and at least if you got to be ready when it happens, because it can happen quick. So for me, remembering that I'm fishing, like this is fishing, even if I'm in a tournament, like I'm fishing. I can be disappointed, but like, you know, get yourself together here, right? So there's that, and then as I said, like, you know, I think I've had some of my like more challenging days. It's like if I've been up late the night before, you know, you're not like reasonably rested. If I'm like, you know, beaten down by the sun, it's hard to go like, you know, stay on it with the same intensity at 1 p.m. as you had at 7 a.m. if you're like beat down, tired, hungry, and sunburned. So I try and keep myself at least physically there, because that has a huge impact on like the positive mentality. And then sometimes I need to take a time out, remember what I'm actually doing, and that it only takes a few minutes to literally turn the entire day around and get on to something good. And if you're not there when that few minutes comes, you might as well just pull the boat out now.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And my biggest struggle is definitely trying to stay physically prepared throughout the whole day, because especially during a tournament, I'm just like hyper focused on fishing, and I'm like, I can drink and eat once the tournament's over, but then like, you know, say the tournament ends at 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock rolls around, and I'm just like a zombie on the boat, and I'm like, all right. And instead of taking like a minute here or there throughout the day to eat, then I have to take 10 minutes to try and recuperate and everything. And I'm like drained, versus if you just kind of keep up on it throughout the day, you're in a much better position. And
yeah, it's a sport in a different way than something like football or hockey is, right? Like it's still a sport, like 8 hours straight in the elements, with no timeouts. There's no timeouts, there's no intermission, there's no, you know what I mean? Like that doesn't exist. So, you know, I don't know. I think like the mental side of it matters a ton. Like I don't know many people that would, let's say run 60 to 80 miles.
Yeah.
With like in the last third of the day to take a shot at something. But like it takes an insane amount of confidence to be there. But like also at the same time, like you got to physically be able to got to work your way through that. So yeah, I don't know. as I said, I just talked about having eaten half a large pizza for lunch, right? Like it's not necessarily like I'm not here talking about like nutrition, let's say, but I know that like my belly's got to be full, my skin can't be red, and I got to be hydrated. Otherwise, I'm going to be cranky, like anybody. So if I'm cranky, I'm gonna have a really hard time. Like if I'm just having a hard time being positive out there. Like that's just my world. I try and get a good sleep the night before, so that I try and create all of the other the best environment possible to be positive and with it through the entire day. That's all I can do.
Yeah, control the controllables.
You got it, man. You got it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for being on the show today. I really do appreciate it. I'm glad that you guys reached out to me. Very informational episode, and I hope the listeners learned a lot too, as they usually do. But is there anyone you'd like to shout out for supporting you along the way or anything like that?
Man, I think my partner Chris has been huge in our business. I mean, he's a partner. It's a true partnership. My wife, everybody. I mean, it's just a huge piece of it, right? Like I think this is my thing, but it takes a lot of people to be a part of it, especially in a really crazy year. We've got fantastic suppliers, we've got fantastic retail partners. Like we're working as hard as we can. But no, man, thanks for having me around and chopping it up a little bit this morning. It's snowing out where I am right now. We got a long winter ahead, and I'm happy to be here chatting with you because I genuinely love the sport as much as anything else. So thanks for having me. I'm glad we could chop it up here a bit this morning.
Yeah, no doubt. It's talking about fishing definitely eases the pain a little bit of not being able to fish.
Just a little bit. It's still there.
Yeah.
It hurts, but it's a little bit better. You're right.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and tune in for episode number 18 of the JD Outdoors podcast, brought to you, of course, by Tungsten, Tact Calories, X Zone Lures, and JD Outdoors Lure Co. All right. Thanks for listening.